Hello, hello, welcome back. It's me, Xpsupernova, and today we're playing Pizza Tower once again, but instead of a speedrun, I'm not even going to be doing any wall climbing, because I'm doing a little mini challenge here today. So, before we get things off, what is wall running actually? Well, wall running is actually pretty simple to explain. Wall running is whenever we do this, and it happens whenever we do a mock run into a wall, and we jump, or we just grab dash and spam it a bunch of times, or just press it once. Either way, we're not allowed to do that in the slightest. So let's get straight into the challenge, I suppose. Also, yeah, we'll get up to the slopes in a second, but before we do that, the first level ends up being pretty easy, not gonna lie. Like, I can just do pretty basic movement. I don't have to grab dash anywhere in particular or run. But there is this one little part right here where I just have to do a super jump into this, and then do this again, and go straight up. Ends up being not too difficult in the end. Ends up being pretty easy otherwise, so yeah. But then, there's slopes here, and if I start to run up a slope, I will just straight up grab onto the wall immediately. I can grab dash perfectly fine into the wall, it won't do anything. But if I run into it like this, which I'm not going to show because I want to get this little recording done, I will just go up. Just trust me on that one, okay? But yeah, this level ends up being pretty easy otherwise. So anyways, let's get on to John Gutter. John Gutter's actually pretty easy, not gonna lie. There's not really that many issues that are present in this level. All you really need to do is just be careful not to accidentally jump into the wall at the wrong time, and you should be fine for the most part. There's not a single part in this level that's even remotely difficult. It's just a matter of your own mistakes. Also, I don't even know how, but I've like tried John Gutter 10 times, and it shouldn't even be this hard. I just gotta make sure not to mock run anywhere I shouldn't, and I should be fine. Also, holding enemies can be a pretty good idea actually as well. Also, if you do that, somehow it can gain you a lot more height than you would normally get from a normal super jump, so it ends up being pretty useful actually. So I can just grab onto that and I don't even have to super jump. Super jumping has a small con where if you're being not careful, you'll end up like having bad things happen. Also, just running straight into a wall doesn't do anything either. And also, John Gutter's a good place where I can segue into pizza time. Pizza time can either be a huge issue where you have to be really precise with your tricks, or it can just be pretty easy, I guess. I can't super jump there. I have to super jump right here, but otherwise there's not that many issues. Just run to the end and you should be a-okay for the pizza time here. Pizza escape ends up not being that much of an issue actually for the most part. Most of the level is actually pretty simple to complete, and there's not that many issues even though it's more vertical than John Gutter. Pizza escape is also a nice introduction to power-ups. Most power-ups don't actually end up affecting Peppino in any way, shape, or form that makes him not able to grab onto walls. With the exception of the Pizza Peppino, none of them can actually grab onto walls in the same way that Peppino can wall run, so it actually ends up being pretty useful to have a power-up on at all times if you can. They're usually in semi-scripted segments, so you can't do much about it, but during those segments, it ends up being pretty easy. For the most part, Pizza escape is actually pretty easily, so I'm not going to talk much more about it, so let's keep moving on, I suppose, and on to the next level. Ancient Cheese is a level where you can make a lot of little mistakes if you're not careful. It might seem like a pretty easy level at first, but it turns out there's a lot of little places you can grab onto walls, especially with these small cheese platforms if you're not careful. What I'd recommend doing is walking where you absolutely don't need to run. And then when you do need to run, just run in a straight line and don't try to jump at all. In this area, you can probably just do a little super jump and it should be fine and help you out. But otherwise, yeah, this level ends up being kind of tricky, actually. And it gets way worse in pizza time. And here's the hardest part of the level. It's where you have to be careful to do a super jump right here into a dive into a super jump. You're going to be doing a lot of those during this run. So you have to be careful. So practice them here because they are going to be really vital in a lot of parts later on. They help you get precise jumps in without having you, like, accidentally run into a wall. Yeah, they end up being really, really, really useful, so use them wisely. And practice them a lot. Otherwise, yeah, Ancient Cheese, just an overall pretty big difficulty spike from the previous two levels, so be careful. But otherwise, you should be fine. So anyways, let's move on to the level that's even worse than Ancient Cheese. Blood Sauce Dungeon. Now, Blood Sauce Dungeon is a very vertical level, and it causes a lot of issues because of that. You can grab onto walls literally anywhere, because the slopes often are near the walls, and they're very small and easy to catch you off guard, so be very careful. I'd recommend taking Blood Sauce Dungeon pretty slow for the most part, but if you take it fast, you'll get better at the challenge a lot quicker. So do keep that in mind. And there's also some issue parts like right here, where you do have to do a run into a dive, and then you have to turn around really quickly in order to grab this top end, because this top end is vital. I'd recommend grabbing it earlier rather than later, so that way you don't have to mess up your runs at the very end. Yeah, just be extra careful in Blood Sauce Dungeon, because you can mess up anywhere. But also on a random side note, I'm doing this after I've done the original challenge, and oh my gosh, I've improved since I last did Blood Sauce Dungeon. But it's still very difficult, do not get me wrong. It will take almost an hour if you're not careful. Also, be careful of this slope right here, because if you run into it, it will catch you off guard, so be very careful about this one as well. There's a lot of things that will catch you off guard in Blood Sauce Dungeon, and it gets a whole lot worse in Pizza Time. So if you thought it was bad already, well, boy oh boy does it get a whole lot worse. And Pizza Time, as I said before, is a pain. You have to get out of here in 3 minutes, and that's a pretty generous time limit, but it will give you a little bit of anxiety when you do this. Make sure to super jump up here, and you'll also get the achievement guaranteed every time here. But then, this is the part where it gets really difficult. You can super jump in a lot of different places, but most of them are pretty dangerous to do so. And these gaps are actually surprisingly lenient, surprisingly. And you can actually super jump right here. But yeah, you should be very careful, and you have to do a dive in the right spot, or else things will get messed up really quickly. You're gonna have to be doing a lot of super jumps into dives almost everywhere in this level. So be very careful. And this is the hardest part, where you have to be very careful not to get caught off guard by the lava. You have to do a bunch of little tricks in succession to make sure you don't get hit. And but then, right after that, there's another very difficult part where you have to do a super jump, into a dive, into a super jump. As you saw, I messed up there, but it is very difficult to get this right. And if you don't get it right first try, you will be lost. I'm doing this after recording, by the way. I've done this already. But yeah, that's the most difficult part. And after that, you have one more tricky super jump right here, where you have to do that a couple more times. And afterward, you should be fine. But yeah, this level is very difficult, do not get me wrong. And yeah, be very careful and you should be fine. But otherwise, on to the next level. Oregano Desert is really easy and only has 2 somewhat difficult tricks. I mean, I wouldn't even call them difficult tricks because they're very easy to pull off if you've already beaten Blood Sauce Dungeon. They're not even that difficult, honestly. They're just basic things that you'll use all the time in this challenge. Be careful not to fall in these pits, though, because they will make it impossible to get out, actually. Just super jump right here, or you can just jump up there naturally, because those are also not that low. And you have to do a super jump into a dive, into a super jump, into a dive, into a super jump, into a dive, and then another super jump. Then wait right here for these clouds to break up, and then do another super jump, or an uppercut. Either one works, honestly. And afterward, there's just one last tricky part. Let's go! I finally pulled that off on recording. Let's go. Awesome. Swag strats. Also, there's one last hard part in this level that's required. And that's that part. Which actually is easier than it looks, but there's going to be a bunch of those little type of boxes later on that are going to be causing issues. Otherwise, Oregano Desert is easy and there's nothing you need to worry about. So moving on to the next level. Wasteland is a level that introduces these dead slope guys, and if you jump off of them into a wall, you will catch the wall, so be very careful not to do so. Also, I'd recommend grabbing this top end before Pizza Time, because there's going to be the John Ghost following you. Which he doesn't really pose too much of an issue, actually, throughout the level, surprisingly. But he is there in case, like, something bad happens, and it can catch you off guard at least once. Also, it introduces the beautiful Ghost power-up, which makes you not able to grab walls at all. And that's completely awesome. But do be careful not to accidentally grab walls in certain segments, because there are a couple segments that'll catch you off guard before Pizza Time. In this segment, you want to super jump, do a dive into a super jump right here, and then grab the top one right here. Because, yeah, that's the only way to grab it. And take out any Bandito chickens in your way, because they might cause issues later. Now, Pizza Time is quite a bit more difficult than pre-Pizza Time, actually. This part is also kind of tricky to super jump into, but the game is really lenient with this kind of thing, so it's very nice. Also, during this part, don't press the jump button, because if you do, you'll grab onto a wall with these dead bodies. But yeah, they will help you get to the end pretty quickly without you having to worry about accidentally grabbing walls otherwise. But yeah, just do an uppercut right there and you should be fine. So this part's a little bit strict, so be careful. Super jump right here because you have to be careful, and then just uppercut. And you should be fine to get across that gap. Make sure to super jump right here. It's a little bit lenient and you will have to mock dash for the entirety of that, so be careful about that as well. Also, be careful of this sneaky slope that will catch you off guard. It's caught me off guard at least once, so be careful about that. Also, no, my challenge hasn't taken that long. Wait, I'm on the actual recording, never mind. Oh. Yeah, it took me 8 hours to complete this almost. It was insane. But yeah. After this part, it ends up being pretty easy, minus one last final trick, which we'll get into in just a second. And this is the last part, and it ends up being kind of tricky, actually. Take out this guy, in case you haven't done it before. Then jump off this guy into a mock dash. It might take you a couple attempts to do so, but do not grab the edges of the walls, or else they will make you wall climb. And do a super jump right there, and you should be home free, assuming you don't run. So just walk to the finish and do your victory dance, or whatever you want to do. And with that, we're done with Waystart, and let's get on to Fun Farm. Fun Farm is both very easy and has some difficult tricks in it. There's really only 2 segments that'll actually probably catch you off guard most of the time, and it ends up being pretty easy for the most part, but there are some places that are an issue. Also, there happen to be these nice ladders that can help you get up here to spaces you wouldn't normally be able to get with just an uppercut or a jump. So it ends up being pretty nice. Right here, you'll have to super jump. But you should be fine for the most part in this level, up until the tricky parts. There's no major issues otherwise. The first difficult part is this part, where you have to do a super jump, where you have to do a super jump into a dive into a super jump, which is actually pretty difficult, not gonna lie. But luckily, it's still possible to do it. I can just do it right now. Yes, and after that, you just uppercut right here and then grab onto this ladder. Also, on an unrelated side note, this drone is probably the most difficult to get in the entire game, actually, so be careful. I'd recommend grabbing this guy if you do, luring this guy over, then jumping off of this guy. Then doing a dive, into an uppercut, into another uppercut, then grabbing this guy again, then doing a double uppercut to get up here. After that, you can grab Jerome and it should be fine. All of the Jeromes end up being pretty easy for the most part, so I'm not going to really talk about it again unless I see another one that's actually happens to be pretty difficult to get. And also, grab these guys to get this top end much easier without accidentally grabbing the walls. You can also just uppercut those boxes as well, but sometimes it's more swag to just throw the enemies at the boxes instead. Make sure to try to keep more in this segment because he'll be pretty useful for the most part. Also, look at that speeding. Also, this is the last difficult part of the run. Now, what you want to do here, actually, is probably not kill those guys, but instead grab one of those guys. What you actually want to do here is want to uppercut right here, and then grab one of those guys and bounce off of this guy to get up there. I can't do that, however, but if you happen to kill them, all you have to do is do a super jump into a dash, into a dive, into a super jump, into a dive, into a super jump, like this. Heck yeah. It's actually easier than it looks, but like it's still pretty difficult and you can mess up right there. And just die. Then the rest of the level should be an absolute cakewalk to get through. Fast Food Saloon is actually a surprisingly difficult level, but because of one little trick at the beginning, but afterwards it becomes a lot easier for the most part. Well, you have to take some parts of this fast, but it is pretty fun to take it as a fast level, honestly. The first trick here is to do a super jump into a shoulder bash, which is actually a little bit tighter than you'd expect. It's tighter than the one in Blood Sauce Dungeon. Yeah, if you keep the shoulder bash animation, you know you've done it correctly. So do a super jump into a dive, into a dive, into a super jump, into a dive, do a super jump into a shoulder bash. You should be fine. Be careful right here because this wall will catch you off guard if you're not careful. Do a super jump right here into another shoulder bash the opposite direction, and then you should be fine. Just dive right here and then do a body slam, and you should be fine right there as well. A lot of these parts are pretty tricky, so I'm not going to go over all of them, but I am going to go over the unique tricks at this level. Also, be careful with the weenie mount. You want it to be facing right here, so you don't accidentally grab onto the wall. Because that will happen as well, the same way as it does with the bodies. Now here's the first trick of the run, where you want to be doing a super jump into this, into a dive at the right time. Because if you dive at the wrong time, you'll just end up going into free fall on these little fans. Just do dive. Yeah, it takes a couple attempts, but it's not actually that hard. And it's actually pretty lenient with what you have to do, but you have to do it at just the right time for it to work. But it won't end up messing up your runs, probably. That was so close, actually. Jeez. Also, be careful with this weenie mount, because you have to jump into the gaps, and it's a little bit tighter than usual, because you can't grab the walls. Beautiful. Make sure to do an uppercut right there if you feel like you're not going to grab the wall on accident. Because you can't actually uppercut off a wall, as far as I know. I haven't tested that, though, but, you know. I'm doing a no wall climbing run, I can't do that exactly. Now, the last fun part, and probably my favorite trick in the entire run, is with this weenie mount right here. Now, it might not seem like it's going to be a special trick, but trust me, it will be. So first, you want to go up here and go back, but then you want to be careful not to actually run too far. And instead, well, if I get it right this time, I'm still pretty fast, just be careful. You want to grab on and put the weenie mount right there, because if you don't, you'll be soft blocked right there. You can't get out. But yeah, if you place the weenie mount there, the button will just stay pressed, basically. And that's awesome. Heck yeah, speedrun trick. But yeah, once it gets to pizza time, it's not actually that difficult, for the most part. So you have to be careful still, as with all pizza times, and anywhere in any level. There's no particularly tricky parts in pizza time at all, so let's move on to the next one. Also, on a side note, all the bosses are just very easy and they don't cause any issues at all, so I'm not going to be talking about them again from now on, except for the one boss that is an issue. So anyways, let's move on to the next level. Crust Cove is a moderately difficult level compared to most of the levels in this challenge. There are some kind of unique tricks at the beginning here, where you can just uppercut, grab this guy, and do a double uppercut and get up here as well. Then just run back and forth until you get Mach speed, and do a dive into a super jump. Also, from now on, I'm going to be referring to dives into super jumps into dives as super dives, because that just makes the terminology a little bit easier for me to say, I guess. Right here is not really that much of an issue, but just be careful for the most part. Then you want to get Mach speed and grab this top-end. This is one of the two top-ends I would recommend you skip, honestly, because it can end up losing you a couple of runs. Never ended me any runs, surprisingly, but it is a little bit tricky to get, so I'd recommend avoiding it, along with the top-end later on. Take out that pizza goblin, by the way, because he will be a little bit annoying later on if you're not careful. This is probably the trickiest part of the level on its own, for the most part. Because there's a lot of... because the cannon goblin actually ends up being kind of annoying, if you're not careful. Make sure to... you can try to just uppercut up these things and you should be fine, but if you end up, like, super jumping, it's also a valid option. The rest of this level, until pizza time, is actually pretty easy, so I'm just gonna skim over it. Now, pizza time has a couple of tricky parts here and there, which you have to watch out for. No. Make sure to just tap shift whenever you grab that guy. I'm using keyboard, by the way, but if you're using controller, just don't hold Mach Run there, because then you might accidentally grab into a wall because of that slope. Right here is probably the trickiest part to get out of, actually, besides the upcoming segment. You want to do a super jump into a dive into a super jump. I guess a super dive, if you will. And, yeah, I don't know why I'm doing that, let's keep it. And you want to get a super jump right here. This is actually the hardest part. You want to do a super jump into a dive into a super jump, and it's all in, like, a couple of frames within each other, so be very, very careful. But after that, Crust Cove is pretty easy, so anyways, let's move on to the next level. The first part of Gnome Forest is really, really, really easy. And, like, there's not a single issue at all. You can just walk through the entirety of it if you want to. It's not going to be any sort of issue at all. No tricks at all are needed here. Just kind of go fast if you want to. Don't go fast if you don't want to. So this noise goblin right here is still kind of annoying, as always. Or I guess he isn't annoying in a normal one, because you can just run up the wall and kill him. Just kill all these noise goblins, because they'll be a little bit annoying later on. Well, I mean, that's what I would say if it weren't for the fact there's a big issue. Now, here's the thing. Gustavo and Brick, they cause an issue, but more of a philosophical issue than anything else. Now, I said before that I want it to be no wall running, but here's the thing. Gustavo and Brick don't have wall running at all, so they should be fine, right? But there's kind of a weird situation with them, and it has to do with their wall jump. Now, for some things, it's kind of weird, because this wall jump isn't a wall run at all, but it feels like their own version of a wall run, so I'm not allowing it at all in the challenge. But it raises an interesting question for you guys, the viewers. Do you guys think it should be allowed or not? Because if it is allowed, then it saves a lot of pain later, but I've already recorded this, so I've already gone through the pain. But yeah, if it is allowed, then this level is perfectly possible. It's just a little bit tricky in pizza time at the very end, where you might have to be careful with Peppino. Otherwise, yeah, no force is impossible under my own rule set. Golf is the easiest level in the entire game. There's literally zero issues throughout the entirety of it. Not a single part of it is difficult at all. You might mess up a couple times if you do something wrong, but otherwise, yeah, it's the easiest level in the game, besides maybe the tutorial. I don't know, but then again, it doesn't even have any tricks at all. It's just simple and easy. So yeah, just enjoy some golf as you go through it and collect all the top ends. And otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much it for this. There's nothing else to talk about, so let's move on to the next level. Deep Dish 9 is actually a surprisingly easy level. And it's all thanks to these beautiful olives that help you float up. This level would be very hard otherwise if there weren't these olives here. Also, this is the other top end I'd recommend skipping because it can end a run if you're not careful. It's probably one of the hardest top ends to get in the game. But it's still very easy, just saying. So if you want to go after it, go right ahead. Also, this part's a little bit tricky if you're not careful. I'm surprised I ran through that all in one go, so dang. I recommend taking it a bit slower than I did there, but yeah, it's not that difficult to do that part. Just be a little bit careful. Do a super jump into a super dive, into another super dive right here, and you should be fine for that part as well. It's a little bit tricky, but it's actually not that bad. Now, pizza time actually isn't that difficult for the most part, minus one small trick that can soft lock you. It's not particularly difficult to get done, but it is still something that can end your run. And it's pretty close to the end. You want to jump off these two guys and you hopefully won't accidentally fall back down. Because if you do, then you're soft locked. Unless you do a double uppercut. But yeah, that part's pretty easy, but if you do mess up, you will get stuck there. But otherwise, yeah, Deep Dish 9 doesn't have much else to talk about, so let's move on to the next level. The big city is easy, but there is like one tricky part with Peppino, and then the rest of it's really easy. Now this second top end is actually a little bit difficult to grab if you're not careful. Which what you need to do is do a super jump and then go get a running start. And if you get stuck right here, you can just super jump right back down. Just jump at the right time and make sure you don't accidentally grab the wall and you should be fine right there. Also, this level would actually be impossible without this rat balloon, which is very interesting to think about, honestly. I'm glad that rat balloon exists because the challenge would be impossible. It's almost like this game was kind of designed without it even, which is interesting. Because every part of this level, besides like Gustavo and Brick, is actually possible. Well, I guess the Gustavo Brick section right here is possible. I suppose I'll get into it now. Once we get to them, I suppose. Yeah, Gustavo and Brick, guess what? They have lots of advantages. You can run straight into walls in the air and you won't even grab onto them. Just be careful not to double jump too much. Just be careful with your double jumps and everything should be fine with Gustavo and Brick. They're awesome. Gustavo and Brick are very easy to play, honestly. There's no particularly difficult tricks at all with them. Just be careful not to get stuck down here, because otherwise you will get stuck. And yeah, that's really it. Just be careful about that and you should be good. Anyways, let's move on to the next level. Happy Bot Factory is, well, it's kind of just middlingly difficult. There's not really any super tricky parts here. You just gotta super jump in the right places and you should be fine for the most part. This is a little bit tricky to get right first try, but if you do, then that's nice. Be careful not to accidentally grab onto walls. An uppercut right here so you don't accidentally grab the wall as well. And then do another uppercut right there. It also brings up an interesting kind of, like, another question that is very weird. Also, it gets a little bit more difficult in, the second part of it, actually, where you have to be careful where you Mach run. This part's also a little tricky to actually get right, if you're not careful, so just try to super run when you can, and then when you get to the very end, just do a super jump. Oh my gosh, pizza goblin. Out of my way. Yeah, just be careful right here, because you have to super run right here. Not super run. I'd recommend doing a dive into a super jump right here. And be careful, because, yeah. Also, Peppybot Factory brings up a weirdly interesting question, because here's the thing. This isn't a wall. Well, it kind of is, but, like, when we press Mach Dash up it, we just step up it. We don't actually make the regular animation, as you can see. It's weird, but I count it as being fine, but I'm going to still try to avoid it if I can. It does occur in a couple more levels, but, yeah. Pretty much it for Peppybot Factory. The rest of it's pretty easy, minus the very ending part, but you can also be... Well, it would be hard, actually, if it weren't for the fact there was a transformation in the form of the pizza box. But yeah, otherwise, let's move on to the next level. Oh shit is the hardest level in the game, period. No other level compares. Every single level pales in comparison to oh shit. Bloodsauce Dungeon? You thought Bloodsauce Dungeon was hard? This is 10 times as bad. And it's all because of some small quirks of the game, actually. That you should be very careful about. Now, first of all, it already kind of spites you in your face by making you wall jump, but I'm allowing this as a transformation, not as, you know, Gustavo and Brick. It's a little bit different. I don't know. It's fine. It's not a wall run anyway, so it's still technically fine. I could allow Gustavo and Brick, but I wanted to not do that for Gustavo, because it's kind of there for him. I don't know. But yeah, these pipes are what cause all of the issues in this level. This level is actually pretty easy besides the pipes, for the most part. There's still a couple tricky parts without the pipes. But the parts with the pipes are absolute nightmares. Now, some of these pipes might not seem pretty innocent, you know, like this pipe, it just shoots me upward, but yeah, there's some pipes that cause a lot of issues. And it took me almost 3 hours to beat this level. And that's not including with that time right there, because that time right there is just before the debug trying attempt. You can't not even do no inputs here. Luckily, I didn't grab that wall there, but it's pretty inconsistent. What you need to do is try to taunt and press down as quickly as you can. Or just kind of spam buttons until you don't grab the wall. I don't know. I don't even know how to consistently do it. And this next part, just don't press any inputs and you should be fine. Most of the time. You won't grab onto the wall, instead we'll just bonk straight into it. Yeah, this level is a nightmare, and I don't blame you for going with Gustavo and Brick's wall jumping if you do. Because, honestly, this level's not worth it. If you do it yourself, don't do oh shit. It is a pain in the ass. In order for this to not take forever to record, I already completed it in another place, and I'll show it in raw footage later. But, thank you to Keshoo for helping me out with this challenge, because it would have been way harder without them. So thank you so much. But in order to actually complete this part, you need to taunt, then turn around, all while holding the Mach Run button. Then you need a super launch right there. And I don't even know how to do it consistently. This took me hours to even do the first time. And afterward, it still wasn't consistent. It's a pain. But yes, here we go. I have to use debug just to show this. That's how hard this is. I did it, though, once in a run. Along with all the other tricks, it's a pain. Oh my gosh. Yep, that's the trick right there. It's very, very difficult to pull off. But that's not even the final hard one. The rest of this level from here on, minus the final trick, isn't actually that difficult, though. Which is very good. I haven't messed up anywhere within this part, except for, like, once. Which is very nice. Also, just grab the beautiful guy we all know as, what's his name?
Oh, you actually can't even do the challenge unless with my rule set, but if you do happen to do this challenge with getting all Jeromes, at least grab this one. Even if you don't happen to want to do it, just do it anyways. It will help you immensely later. But yes. After this part's pretty easy for the most part. Yeah, I'll meet you guys at the final pipe. Also, beware after this transition, there is a sneaky slope that will catch you off guard. Be very careful, because this would be stupid if you ended it right there. Not your fault, though. It's the game's fault. How could they? Now, this final part here is actually surprisingly tricky, and it all ends with a nightmare of a pipe. Also, it brings up more of those steps as well, so just letting you know. Right here, it's fine, but then you have to be careful to super jump right here. Then do a super dive, and then another super dive or a super uppercut. Then spam buttons as you can, and hopefully you won't grab onto that. I'm not even sure if I grabbed onto that or not. But, yeah, you get the point. It's a pain. This level took me so long to complete, and I'm glad to be over with it. But anyways, let's move on to an easier level, but still surprisingly difficult. Refrigerator, freezerator is actually kind of difficult, but it's only because of some, like, kind of precise movement. Now that part, you have to make sure you're still doing the shoulder bash animation, or else you grab the wall. Yeah, once you get after that, it's just mostly kind of not super tricky stuff, honestly. Just gotta be kind of careful with most of these parts, because it is a pretty tricky level overall. It's one of those levels where it's like, ah yes, nothing in there is super duper tricky, but everywhere around is like kind of difficult. Yeah, that part's a little bit tricky right there, but there's like just a bunch of small little tricks that make this level kind of difficult, not gonna lie. It's actually weirdly difficult, but it's also pretty fun. It's not like frustrating or anything like that, but it is quite a difficult level. Overall, this level doesn't actually have so much to talk about, so anyways, let's move on to the next boss battle, which actually does have a couple issues on it. Its hand. Big Peppino is actually... He seems like he's easy at first, obviously, but if you've played him before, you know exactly why this guy is difficult. And it's all because of his his third phase, not his second phase, I guess. I don't know what you exactly consider a phase, but I guess I would consider it his third phase, where he becomes the giant, weird Peppino monster. I'd recommend taking as little damage as you can in this level, because it'll help you immensely later on. This is the part that's kind of difficult, because you have to be very careful, because you can go fast, but you have to just be careful not to grab onto the walls, really. Make sure to dive as much as you can. Do uppercuts right here. You gotta be very careful. In fact, I've done this challenge for almost 12 hours. Oh my gosh. Wait, I just S-ranked this. It's possible to not even take any damage? Wait, what? I didn't actually expect that. But yeah, if you're quick, you won't take any damage at all, and you can actually P-rank it. It's actually not as hard as you would think, but do be very careful and try not to grab any walls if you can. Aw man, almost a P-rank though. That would have been awesome if I P-ranked it. Anyways, yes, let's move on to the next levels, which, surprisingly, 2 out of 3 are actually not that difficult. Pizza Scare, surprisingly, isn't actually that difficult. You just gotta be kind of careful and like, all over the place. It's not actually difficult. It's actually pretty dang easy for the most part. There is this one tricky part right here where you have to be facing right, left, and then you want to uppercut right here so you don't accidentally grab onto the walls at all. Yeah, otherwise there's not that many tricks here, so let's move on to the next level. War is actually not that difficult, honestly. And especially since the gun is here to help you out. The gun actually is pretty useful because if you run into a wall and you press it, and you just jump, and then you shoot, you will never grab the wall. Not in a million years, which is awesome. So I can just jump at walls, and then shoot the gun if I accidentally get too close to it, while knock running. Yeah, the level's not actually that difficult, it just has a time limit, but the time limit isn't that strict, actually, compared to other levels for pizza time. It's actually less strict than some pizza times in this run, actually, which is surprising. But yeah, basically all you gotta do is just run to the end like you normally would, collect all the top hits along the way, and you should be a-okay to go. It's even possible to P-rank it, I do believe. Actually, yes it is, absolutely possible to P-rank it. So if you want to go P-rank it, go for it. I'm not going to be P-ranking it here because I have things to do, and I have a challenge to complete. Although I've already done this, as I said before. But I have some footage to get, and I need to give it to you guys, which is kind of the whole point of this. But anyways, yeah, there's not much to talk about in War. It's actually very, very easy to get through it. It's just, you run through it basically normally, because I don't think you really grab walls except for, like, a certain segment. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, the level's pretty easy, and let's move on to the next one. The Crumbling Tower of Pizza is actually pretty easy for the most part, but there is only, like, one kind of tricky part that you do need to watch out for, and that's really it. I'm not even joking, like, the entirety of this is actually very easy if you're careful. It is pretty strict on the time limit, though. It's the strictest in the game for it, as a matter of fact. I mean, there's been a lot of time limits, and a lot of them have been, like, not very strict. But this one, it's actually kind of strict, so you do need to take... You can't really take your time too much in this level. You gotta be kind of fast, actually. Apparently dive off the weenie mount as well. I didn't know that until I did this. Now here's the part where you have to be careful. What you need to do is you need to get into Mach 2, like this, and then you need to super jump like this. It's actually a little bit less tight than I think, but I mean, I have an insane reaction speed at times, so take my word for any of these things that are like, yeah, this might be like kinda tight, but probably not. Might just be my insane reaction time, because I do happen to have one, honestly. Sometimes anyways, like, sometimes my reaction time is like extraordinarily slow, sometimes it's just blazing fast. I don't even know how it works, honestly. It's very weird. And at this point, I'm just rambling, just to increase the length of the video, which I don't really need to do. Be careful around here, because you don't need to go running through it, just uppercut twice and do that. I don't know why I uppercut instead of jump, but like, uppercutting just feels safer, I don't know. Even though it's actually more dangerous, because you go into grab dash state, kind of. Press the grab dash button, which you should never press. Also, yes, this is golf. No! Get back over here, mister. We're hitting you in with a hot dog, not a primo bird like last time. Heck yeah, let's go. Dang, we have a lot of time left compared to my usual speed. Super jump right here, and you're home free, basically. All you gotta do is get into Mach 2, and then just dive. Hold the dive button, and you basically won. Epic slide of victory for the third time. And that's an easy W, honestly. Actually, that was very difficult, not gonna lie. The challenge has been insane. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the challenge. If you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like or maybe subscribing. I also have a Discord server that will exist, I suppose. So if you want to join that, it's there. I usually link it in the description every time. So if you want to go in, you can do that. Also, yeah, we have at last finished the challenge. So this time for real, because I mean, I haven't actually gone through the cutscenes for the credits, surprisingly. Anyways, yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye!